Another incredibly interesting topic that is just absolutely so relevant. Innovating collaboration between higher education and the Department of Defense. A stimulating topic because you think about enablement that we talked about earlier, and listening and learning, that whole learning environment, bringing that together, and that partnership that they actually talked about in the earlier panel. Really incredible. So let me welcome back up to the stage Mr. Adbul Subhani, who's the moderator as well, and then Shane Reeves, Nancy Brickhouse, and Richard Rhodes. Please come on up.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate. Thanks, Patrick, for the introduction. So I thought it would be a good idea to give a little bit more introduction to our panelist. Brigadier General Shane Reeves serves as the 15th Dean of the Academic Board at West Point, United States Military Academy. Good friend. I've been working with him in the last year or so as the Innovation Chair as well. Dr. Nancy Brickhouse, Vice President and Provost, as Baylor's Chief Academic Officer. Dr. Brickhouse oversees the university's 12 colleges and schools, research enterprise, university libraries, and centers and institutes. Thank you, ma'am, for coming. Dr. Richard Rhodes, Chancellor of Austin Community College. Thank you, sir, for all your leadership, and of course, a beautiful building that we are in sitting. So appreciate that all you are doing. Not just for Austin, but also for DoD itself. So appreciate it. So the requirements are the same. I'll ask some questions. The questions will be not for just one person. Any of you can answer. And I thought it would be a good idea to have a dialogue more than a conversational piece than anything else. So I'll start first with what role can academia play in forging modern change in digital transformation for DoD or federal government?
I guess I'll start.
Sure.
So from the community college standpoint, we are really interested in the utilization of training technicians. But what it really means to us is a number of things. Number one is collaboration on the type of curriculum that's necessary for the skill sets that can be offered to our students, but actually how does that relate to what's being done in the software factory in Army Futures Command? So that's one. The other is bringing together in a collaborative spirit industry partners with Army, with ACC, with our students, and how do we get that cross-fertilization of knowledge, skills, research, all going together. And so working together in that way, bringing the three entities together for the future.
Thank you.
I would just add that I think what academia does is it provides a certain kind of intellectual resource as well as physical resources that it can bring to the table. In addition to students, we have faculty that are very engaged in research, so those research collaborations are really important. But one of the things that we've typically done, I think, in the past is we've thought about research being over here and workforce development being over here, and I think the future is going to be about us being able to work together because big projects require both a workforce as well as new innovations that are led by our research endeavors. And so I think that that's an area where, again, collaborations across sectors, different kinds of schools have different kinds of missions, different kinds of resources to bear on particular issues, and opportunities to collaborate with both industry as well as governmental agencies.
General Reeves, as you have a unique perspective probably as an academic institution and part of being
Sure.
a DoD.
First off, I have to say the word must have gotten out that we were spitters. There was nobody in the front row. Then you came up, and I'm like, all right, there he goes. I'm like, what's going on there? And I also have to tell you, before I even answer this, I'm excited to be here, and it's great to be up here with you all. And thanks for the opportunity. My closest experience to talking to something like South by Southwest was I talked to a bunch of federal judges in San Diego at the same time Comic-Con was taking place. And I was talking, and as I was discussing this, whatever with the federal judges, a guy came in a full Chewbacca costume in the back. And he wandered in, and he was profusely apologizing because he wasn't supposed to be. It was surreal watching a guy in a Chewbacca outfit trying to back out. And so my expectations are high. I'm waiting for like a Taylor Swift or something to wander in the back and say, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to be here. Anyways, this should be a lot of fun. And I'm excited for this conversation for lots of reasons. You're right in that West Point sits in a particularly interesting place because we have our foot both in academia and we have our foot in DoD. And therefore, there's some synergies where we have the opportunity to provide a venue where the academic community comes, but also the operational and practical come. And there's sometimes those communities don't talk and they don't intersect. And by coming together at West Point, they have an opportunity to really start to figure out ways to develop solutions that have some critical thinking behind it, which you'd find in an academic setting, and well thought out, deeply thought solutions, but also that are operational and practical. And so we're really seeing this on the tech side, right? We're really starting to see, a lot of innovations when it comes to applications of tech in the classroom and how we do different things with cadets in some of our research. But those innovations are really grounded in the practical applications that are necessary for the operator to succeed.
So I'll go back to Dr. Rhodes, and just going into the more details. If the focus is always can be on students and faculty, because at the end of the day, it's still an academic institution. How are you seeing how hard that is to bring faculty involved in it who've been doing it for the last 10, 15 years? They're trying to, now you're asking them about the digital transformation. How are they reacting into this whole conversation?
Yeah, very, very well. We have a mantra at ACC, innovation plus collaboration equals transformation. It's a part of our DNA that we're looking at innovative practices and collaborating. And so our faculty have been on board to better understand what's necessary to stay in touch with the new skill sets. And what they get excited about too, I think, is seeing outside entities such as a software factory, such as VMware, such as our industry partners, coming together to solve real world problems. And they can do that in a collaborative environment and be innovative. So it's not, it's not teaching what they learned 15 years ago. It's learning new. So, we're a learning college, and learning is lifelong. And they understand that, and they have embraced that. So our faculty, I couldn't be more proud of them. As a chancellor, looking at how involved they are with finding new solutions, new skill set deliveries.
Dr. Brickhouse?
Yeah, so, Baylor is in a great position right now in that we're on a pretty aggressive growth trajectory with regard to research. We're growing our expenditures at about 30% per year. We have for the last 4 years. And about 10 years ago, we bought a building that was a tire factory. It's a 300,000 square foot building. It's about half built out. And it's away from campus, so it's about a mile from campus. So we're not going to teach regular classes out there. It's really built for, it's really about providing space for faculty who want to do applied research, who want to be located with industries with which they're partnering, where we can have our tech transfer capabilities also located out there so that we can move quickly to commercialization. And the thing that's interesting about this is because we're in a growth stage, what we're doing is we're attracting faculty who want to do that work. In fact, the Brick is a huge draw for faculty who need space to grow. We brought a group actually from the University of Alabama, where frankly they're landlocked. There was nothing else that the university could really offer those faculty, and they needed space to grow. And so I put people who see the Brick into two categories. Those who say, a lot of underutilized space. Then on the other hand, opportunity. And so we're really expanding that space. We find a lot of exciting things going on in terms of, again, you know, faculty come in all different kinds. And being out at the Brick is not for everybody. But for those who are really committed to doing applied research with partners, whether they be governmental agencies or whether they be industries, you know, this is ideal for them.
Reeves.
So, I mean, it's an interesting question because West Point's an undergraduate institution which is focused primarily on the education, training, inspiring the Corps cadets to be leaders of character that have the ability to lead our military from now and into the future. Yet, it's not something that we're ignoring when it comes to the connection between research and education. As a matter of fact, it's critical. It's a critical component. Eric Schmidt, who is the CEO of Google, had a really interesting article in the recent edition of the Foreign Affairs journal. And then he talks all about innovation, and he just says, hey, innovation is, those who can do it faster and better are going to have a huge advantage in this next century of global competition. And he discussed that underlying military, economic, and cultural power is innovation. And his last line in the article is very much, he just says, we have to innovate or die. And West Point recognizes this, right? We recognize, and sometimes when you say innovation, it's a catch-all for lots of different things. It can mean harnessing emerging tech, or in the military, does it mean come up with new doctrine? Does it mean transform an organization? It's all of those things. But what powers all of that is leadership. I mean, it's just plain and simple leadership. And so West Point recognizes the importance of developing the leaders from the military that are creative, that are entrepreneurial, that aren't risk adverse, that are willing to challenge assumptions. And that is through a rigorous and robust undergraduate education where cadets are provided an intellectual foundation to be able to successfully navigate the ambiguities, complexities, and uncertainties of the modern and future battle space. And to do that, you can't do that simply in this day and age without a connection to research. And so West Point's heavily dedicated to research. We have 13 academic departments and 27 centers and institutes nested inside our academic departments. But similar to your point about the physical transformation, right now there's a 136,000 square foot, $290 million project to build a new building at West Point that's focused solely on cyber engineering and autonomy and a number of other things that deal with space, cyber, and data. And so what we find is cadets and undergraduates, forget about cadets, just undergraduate students expect to be able to do research at the undergraduate level now.
That's right.
And they expect to work with faculty that are interested in it. And that's really because that intellectual foundation I discussed about, it's not just providing an intellectual foundation so that they can have that creativity necessary to be successful. They also need to be lifelong learners who consistently are having a chance to satisfy their intellectual curiosity. And that typically comes through a connection between teaching and research and cadets partnering with faculty to delve deeply onto a particular topic.
You know, Abdul, if I could add to that,
Yes, sir.
Part of it is, the willingness to look at new deliveries of education and training. And one of those, I'll use an example that about 7 or 8 years ago, ACC received a grant from the Department of Labor, a TACTA grant, to convert our software development program into competency-based units. And, I would have to say when we had our very first meeting, because you asked how do faculty respond to this, had the very first meeting and some of our faculty in the software development, computer science area, it was when you talk about converting from semester-length classes, 3 credit hour classes to competency-based delivery, it's almost like a deer in the headlights at first, you know, like, well, what are you talking about? And then, you know, the more they got into it and understood it, and our guide on the side was Western Governors University, that we have somebody over here from my class from Western Governors, but they were the guide on the side that really taught us how to deliver competency-based education. And I think, you know, the program almost overnight doubled as a result of going from the 16-week semester classes to a competency-based delivery. And I think that was the real eye-opener to faculty and to our staff as to, you know, we have to continue to look at new ways to deliver education and give credit for what students already know and what competencies they've already gained, whether it's through the military or through work experience. But let them know that we want to help them be expeditious in their pursuit of achieving their dream.
Great insight, sir. Thank you. So with that said, what are some encouraging outcomes some of your institutions have in sprung change in collaboration with or behalf of government agencies that you have worked with? So, Dr. Brickhouse.
So I think the main thing that we have really achieved in terms of our collaborations is simply a greater research output, greater opportunity to attract graduate students to Baylor to do work. A lot of the resources that we're now using to build our research enterprise are also coming from within Baylor, from our own IP, from commercialization efforts, and all of that requires very close connectivity with industry.
Dr. Rhodes?
Yep. It's all about relationship. And how do you develop that trust between entities so that you can deliver that type of training and education. But, you know, as an example, at ACC, we've got 3 incubators. One of those incubators, the first one, and this is a result of collaboration and trust by state government in this case, but our bioscience incubator was the first about 6 or 7 years ago, thanks to a grant from the governor's office at the time, Governor Perry. Second was a fashion incubator, and a result of the collaboration and the trust and the network with the city of Austin to provide, you know, almost $15 million worth of software and hardware to deliver that incubator. And the third one was the advanced manufacturing incubator, so that when we take a look at working with the growth industry in Austin, which is in advanced manufacturing, that's puts that together with the industry partners and builds that trust and that relationship necessary for students to get the skill sets and to get the jobs immediately. But the industry partners see where that can happen.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just build on that for a minute, because you're talking a bit about what's going on in terms of advanced manufacturing. If you look at what's going on right now in terms of federal funding, that is where the action is. I mean, the amount of money that's going in to support advanced manufacturing for a whole variety of different reasons, but the challenges around supply chain, and for institutions that can collaborate and think big, there are real resources out there to help you achieve the goals of supplying really big, important problems that go beyond a single sector, that go beyond a particular agency. You know, the supply chain problem, for example, is a problem for the military. It's also a problem for the Department of Energy. I mean, it's a problem for the economy. So, I mean, it's multifaceted. These are big problems, and the way that we're going to solve it is through collaborating, working across sectors, working across various agencies. So we have to think big or go home, and that's me thinking as, you know, coming from a Power 5 school, athletic school, you either go big or you go home.
You know, this space itself is a good example of that. This space, the renovation, this used to be a gymnasium, and this space was renovated, and this is the first utilization actually of this space. And this is a result of collaboration with the governor's office. Governor Abbott and Keith Graff was immensely responsible for making this happen. But it's that building of that relationship over a period of time that is absolutely critical.
Yeah, I would completely echo both those comments about the importance of collaboration and the power of that collaboration. So West Point, in my estimation, and I'm a bit biased because I'm the dean, but doesn't mean I'm wrong, right? So, but it's increasingly the Army's think tank. And there's a reason why. The academic program at West Point is really broad. There's 13 academic departments from all of your science, technology, engineering, and math, to your humanities, to your social sciences. And problem solving today can't be looked at in a single discipline or myopically. It is very much a multifaceted or transdisciplinary approach to problem solving. The example I always give is autonomy or artificial intelligence. You can't think of it just from a technical perspective. I mean, that's what we want to do because that's what it seems like. But there's a lot of ethical and legal questions that come out of those. Sure. History matters. Whenever you bring a new technology into the world, it always makes its way onto the battlefield 100% of the time, despite efforts to try to not allow that to happen. The perfect example is the crossbow. The crossbow was attempted to be banned as being unchivalrous. Didn't work, obviously. And so but you need to be able to think broadly when you look at a problem set. And so West Point has that unique space in the Army because it's also an academic institution with this broad academic program that can solve it. And what we have found is that your point about collaboration is exactly right. Many organizations are coming to us and we're going to them to try to work together. And so we really break it into 3 buckets. There's West Point's connection to DoD. Examples, our chemistry and life science department is working on nanomaterials to try to help build lightweight fuel cells with Army research labs. So there's this connection to other DoD research institutions. Our systems department is working with Futures Command on vertical lift for the next generation helicopter, right? So those type of connections and collaborations matter, but there's also the connections and collaboration with higher education, the rest of it. We have a great partnership with Columbia on building, looking at resilient internet connections and others. And then there's also with industry, and industry is increasingly important. So for example, we work with Lockheed Martin on the implementation of artificial intelligence and missile and space defenses. So this collaborative space, I think, is the way higher education is moving. It's important. It's a symbiotic relationship. It's good for the institution. It's good for drawing faculty. It's good for drawing talented students. But it's also a way to provide intellectual capital back to the greater national good.
So with that said, so how hard is it for Dr. Rhodes and Dr. Brickhouse for collaborating with commercial organizations and with DoD or government sector? What do you see? Is a timeline takes longer, or how hard is it for other institutions and others to do the similar things?
So what are the challenges that we're facing?
If there are any.
Yeah.
Sure.
It was funny. I was listening in the prior session about the conversation about leadership turnover. And I was also listening to what Shane was saying about what they're doing at West Point in terms of the development of leadership. And I want them to be so successful. You've got to have the right leaders in the right places, and you've got to have leaders that have enough of enough time that they're willing to take on big, challenging problems. They can't be so short-sighted that they're only thinking about their next gig. So I would say that that's probably one of the biggest challenges that I see in terms of these collaborations, is it takes multiple partners and multiple sectors coming together for a common vision and being able to stay the course long enough to get something difficult done.
What about you, Doctor?
Yeah. I thought it would be harder than it has been before we started the negotiation and the contract with Army Futures Command. I think one of the issues is oftentimes is a misunderstanding or not knowing each other well enough to understand how we can contract with each other. So in our agreement actually with Army Futures Command with the software factory is through an intergovernmental agreement. And that was really the first exercise between not realizing that Austin Community College is a governmental entity, and as is DoD, and that it can be expeditious contracting through that, that mechanism. And so I think it turned out once we got working together and understood that, we could expedite that whole process, and it became easier than what I originally expected it to be. I think some of the challenges are anytime you have change in leadership, and we had a great relationship with General Murray, who was the first commanding general of Army Futures Command, and really worked close together. And then he retired. And then there was kind of a period that was uncertain what the future is going to be. And now we have General Rainey, who has come in. So we've got those two bookends. But what happened in the middle was this period of uncertainty. And I think from both sides there is risk on change in leadership. And how does that impact and affect the relationship?
I think personalities, like we talked earlier in the previous panel, also matters, and what exactly their thinking is that they want to go for. So I think absolutely the leadership matters. So in your case, sir, as of course you're already in the DoD ecosystem, is it easier for you to go and talk to other military services and have collaboration with them, or you think it's still you have the challenges on that side as well?
There is nothing easy in the government, Abdul, you know that. I mean, your points are well taken, right? I mean, there has to be a way to incentivize not short-term thinking and being willing to take a risk. And one of the incentives that's always out there is the superficiality of just checking things off of a list and saying that's good without thinking deeply on a topic. That's, though, where I think the power of the academic institution connected to DoD really lies. Because academic institutions, in particular faculty that are working on long-term projects, they're the continuity oftentimes. They're the theme that runs through sometimes leadership challenges. On the other hand, you heard Mr. Bang say it in the last session about there is something sometimes nice about changing leadership. There is a level of calcification that falls into,
That's right, too.
when people are in somewhere too long. And it's not always the case, but sometimes fresh blood is good too. So there's got to be a balance between bringing in fresh and new ideas, new energy, but also being able to stay connected to the long-term project. And that's really where I think the connection to higher education with DoD is so important, to think deeply and long-term on these projects that are truthfully not going to be solved in a 12 or 24 month period. They're going to be something much longer, much longer projections on how long it'll take.
I would say one other risk out there is, of course, the political environment and how that affects appropriations and commitment to contracts. And so we always have to be aware of that. And there's changing dynamics, as we progress. But that is a true risk that always is with us.
So with that said, how much does the location of the academic institution matters? I'll go with General Reeves first, as he's a little bit further from Austin.
The weather is exactly the same at West Point as it is in Austin, by the way. It's the exact same. It is, I think it's important. I think the geographic location is important, but I also think where the institution resides in higher education, more of a theoretical place where it resides too, where it resides in higher education and its role also matters. But the geographic location of West Point is helpful in terms of connecting with other institutions of higher education in the Northeast. But more importantly, I think it's where West Point sits at that fulcrum of government and academia. And that's really why it has the ability to effectuate positive change on behalf of the Army. because it is a college, right? It's an institution of higher education, and it comes with all of the accoutrements that come with that, right? Academic freedom and the ability to do deep scholarship and research, the ability to attract faculty that may not have a connection to the Army, but find purpose by being connected to the Army, but also being able to continue to pursue their life's work in a particular discipline. So both the geography, physical geography, but also more importantly for us, where it resides in the greater DoD apparatus, I think is really important.
I'm a big Tom Friedman fan, but he was wrong about the world being flat. The world's pretty bumpy. I think location matters quite a lot. It matters in your ability to attract talent. And so attracting talent to the state of Texas and to Waco, Texas is something that we're continuously working on. The ability to have a 300 square foot building is probably not something you could do in the middle of Austin, would be my guess. But you can do it in Waco. And so it provides opportunity for us because there's so much opportunity for growth there. The industries that are in your neighborhood, it matters what they are, because your greatest opportunities, especially as you consider the fact that both research and workforce development really do need to be thought of as a single thing, where you're placing your students. They're more likely to place locally than they are globally. That's not to say we don't send students across the globe, but your greatest concentration is going to be in your own neighborhood.
How is it getting challenged to do business with DoD in that manner, or in any government agency, being in Waco, Texas?
Having industry that is connected with DoD in your neighborhood, I think provides a great asset for you. We work closely with L3 on non-destructive testing, and that's been very, very fruitful for us. We'd like to have more industry in and around Waco, because we know that those collaborations could, the more industry we have in our neighborhood, the more opportunities we're going to have for collaboration. But we need to also be working with our city, and we are working with our city leaders to help them also attract industry into Waco that will be good for Waco as well as good for Baylor.
Dr. Rhodes?
Yep. I think Austin is just a special place, Austin, Central Texas. And it has all of the essential elements necessary for successful collaboration between DoD, between the Army, and higher education. Because we've got everything from the community college that's innovative, creative, to the University of Texas at Austin and Research One University, but also working with Baylor University and Texas State University. It is a network of collaboration that I haven't really seen exist in other places around the country. And it's a special place that inspires young people in our middle schools, in our high schools, in our grade schools, to see that type of collaboration, that type of willingness to work together to solve problems, that it is special right here in Central Texas. And so, I'm a fan.
So with that said, do the right incentives exist right now for the colleges and universities to partner with federal government or DoD for that matter? Or do you think this is something that DoD needs to work on to find other institutions, academia institutions to start working with?
I think the biggest incentive right now is the money that's being put into things like the CHIPS Act. That's a huge incentive for defense and academia to work together on a really important problem. The United States consumes about 30% of the world's chips, but only produces about 12%. That's a security problem. I think the incentives are in place. There's also a lot of incentive for us to develop our own domestic talent. A lot of universities have become too dependent on foreign talent. There are a lot of incentives to look much more locally, make sure that we're including everyone locally, by the way. Or I should say domestically, not necessarily locally, but domestic talent, I think, is going to be incented also by the way that the federal money is going right now.
You know, I would say that the software factory is a good example of a proof of concept. So under the leadership of Colonel Errico and Colonel Zuniga, they have developed a robust training environment and learning environment, collaborative environment that needs to be scaled throughout other, throughout the Army. And it can be in collaboration with higher education entities such as ACC and other community colleges around the country. But it's time to scale. Take that proof of concept that has been developed here. We have 5 cohorts of soldiers going through this type of environment and solving real world problems and taking that. So how do we take that to scale now? And I think that is our challenge. It should be every branch of the service should be doing the same thing and taking this concept and scale it across the country.
Are you getting, sir, right platforms to voice this opinion? Are you able to have the leadership of Army or DoD in general to voice this opinion? Do you think, in your opinion, how we can make that better? Dr. Rhodes? About saying that software factory needs to be grown and have more software factories all over the country and so forth. Are you able to put your message out there to the senior leaders?
We are trying to do that mightily, whether it's through the American Association of Community Colleges and speaking at conferences, League for Innovation. We're doing a session just in a couple of weeks with community colleges around the state of Texas to talk about what has happened here in this environment. So General Errico will be on a panel with me to really talk about this unique experience, this unique environment that has happened here.
Yeah, I mean, we have to get better. The Department of Defense needs to incentivize a connection with anyone who can really help with the challenges of the modern times. Some people have called this the age of AI. Henry Kissinger famously called it that recently. Others are calling it the age of innovation. But regardless, the thing that is increasingly apparent is the threat environment is dangerous. We don't live in a unipolar world anymore. Pax Americana, if you want to call it that, is just not in existence anymore. The war in Ukraine has changed things dramatically. It is shocking for us to realize, but you're at 300,000 plus casualties in Ukraine. Some will say that it's the 6th most deadly international armed conflict since the Napoleonic Wars, and it's changing. Things are changing so fast, and it's evolving in such a way that you see the asymmetric advantage that technology provides on the battle space there. But that is just the beginning of a shifting global order. You're seeing an increasingly bellicose and rising China, and you're seeing the emerging tech really becoming central to military operations. And so I say all that to say that if we're going to continue to be competitive and dominate this age of whatever you want to call it, I'd call it the age of innovation, then partnerships are going to matter. And the Department of Defense is aware and needs to figure out ways to incentivize those partnerships, because we've gone through this in previous iterations historically. And most famously, you might think of the Manhattan Project, something along those lines. I mean, it matters. Like, we need everybody. We need the entire, all the power that comes from the United States, both hard and soft, to work together to try to maintain. And I make no, this isn't not make no excuses for this, but the primacy of the United States for the next century and beyond. And so that's what it's going to take. And so if the incentive structures aren't there, we need to figure out a way to make it so that they exist.
Do you guys think that your students are able to get internships or somehow knowledge while they're in your college or universities, that they're able to understand what DoD brings? Because sometimes I think students do not even understand what kind of jobs there are outside. For example, some students think the Army is still not developing software applications, and they have a different thoughts on each one of the military services. So, John Reeves, I know one of your cadets.
Ask him right there.
Yeah,
He's one, right?
One of your cadets are right here. He came here for internship, but it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because conversation, I actually asked him how he was able to come. He says he just sent an email to Colonel Errico directly.
That's spring break, though. I mean, we send 1,000 cadets on internships to over 330 places every summer, and it's across Department of Defense, academia, and other institutions. And now, experiential learning and project-based learning, sometimes I combine them, but I mean, it is critical to education. It's just, sitting in a classroom and receiving information isn't going to do it any longer. So back to this connection to education and research, but also getting out and seeing the real-world application of that is increasingly important, so that they do understand what is out there and what's necessary to be effective as soon as they hit the ground. And cadets today, these young officers are a little bit different. They're a little bit more. This is good. They're a little bit less patient in terms of waiting to see what I can do to effectuate positive change. Like, they want to get moving, which is good. It's like, let's go.
How's your collaboration in the commercial industry for them to go do internships?
Pretty good. So we have a number of partnerships with lots of different companies I won't mention right now, but there's a lot of them. And again, it's really trying to help them understand the power of this collaboration that you talked about, as well as to see leadership in a different environment. And then to encourage them to be the lifelong learner that we expect of our officers. But I think our problem is something different. It's not the ability to partner with others, it's really finding the time to allow them to partner, because the demands on cadets are so intense. And it's trying to build white space, so that they can go and do the things that will help them when they become young officers.
I'm not sure I have a lot to add. I would just say, yeah, absolutely. Baylor students overwhelmingly engage in internships before they graduate, especially if they're in the business school and in our engineering computer science programs. They have very strong internship programs. About 20% of our engineering students also end up in the defense industry. So that's a big draw for Baylor students.
Do you facilitate those internships, or they are actually going and getting themselves?
Oh, no. We provide a lot of those internships for them. We have long-term relationships with companies throughout Texas and beyond, really. And so, no, students don't go out scouting on their own.
Yeah, I would say the greatest added value to what happens in a classroom is an internship, a paid internship, for a student to gain that experience with what they're learning in the classroom really brings relevance to what they need to know to be successful in the work world. So, I'm a product of that. So when I went through my bachelor's degree, I had paid internships every other, 6 months. So I'd be on 6 months and then at the university for 6 months and then working 6 months and back and forth. And that brought the relevance that I needed in order to be a better person in accounting who's laughing over there? But yeah. But it's great, whether you're an engineer or an accountant or whatever, to have that work experience with the classroom experience.
Right. So how can your individual schools do better in the next year in the helping government, DoD, change for the good, for the institutions, academia, and so forth?
Let me start.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is unique to West Point. I think it's probably, I don't know, I'll hear from you all. I think it's pervasive through higher education, but trying to break down silos between certain disciplines to get them to work together. Right? That is a consistent challenge, is trying to get away from siloed approaches to problem solving and bringing in a lot of people with different perspectives to work on a problem set. And so one of the things that we're undertaking is creating an innovation hub when you're, because you're instrumental in helping us develop it. But it's really, and you've talked about a proof of concept with the software factory. It's a similar type of idea, but that academic program at West Point that has this wide range of expertise, and all these centers and institutes can come together to really work in a way that is not siloed, that it is intended to be a multifaceted approach to problem solving. So that's an initiative that we're undertaking that should be off the ground hopefully by this summer, and I think that will help us get after the siloed approach to problem solving.
Great, thank you.
So there's a saying that the world has problems and universities has disciplines. And so I will say that I think that is a challenge for most universities. It's one of the things that we're very focused on at Baylor. We have a new material science initiative that is proving to be kind of interesting because 4 years ago, we didn't have anything really going on in material science, but it's such a new area. We've largely kind of built it from scratch, and we're building it in a way that is intentionally interdisciplinary, and we're building a faculty that span across mechanical engineering, electrical computer engineering, physics, chemistry. I mean, it's really campus-wide. And so we're learning how to manage this, this program that doesn't clearly reside in any academic discipline, and we're building a faculty to support that. We're looking at ways in which we build an infrastructure as well that works across disciplines. Most of it's going to be out at the Brick, where you're going to have actually physicists and engineers actually working in the same space, collaborating on research projects together. It's a lot of fun for me too, because I get to sit in these meetings and listen to them talk about, what kind of capability they need collectively in order to get the work done that they're trying to do. So I guess one of the things I'm learning is just that in some respects, moving something that already exists is really, really challenging. Sometimes the answer might be to kind of start from ground zero and build it that way.
Sometimes we get so focused on the technology necessary right away that we lose sight of what also is important, and that's things such as liberal arts. And I can't remember the exact quote, but the technology guru that we would think of in history is Steve Jobs. And I remember seeing a presentation by Steve Jobs that he said, technology is in our DNA, but it's the liberal arts and the social sciences that makes our hearts sing. And I think we can't afford to lose sight of that.
Thank you. I think I'll ask Patrick to have some questions for us.
Thank you. Again, just stimulating conversation. I always try to take some notes to kind of just refresh my memory, but words came to mind around the theme of learning, collaboration, relationship, partnership, innovation, connecting. Those seem to really just weave throughout your entire conversation, and the similarities were just simply amazing. So thank you. Great content. This is the time for you all for some question and answers, and I'd say we have that's why you get to sit in the front row, right? You get to have the hand up first, ask the first question. So 1 second, the microphone's coming to you.
Hi, my name is James Cloninger. I'm from with Motif Corporation. We're about 50-person innovation consultancy in DC. Work with the government a lot. Sorry, sir, I didn't bring my Chewbacca costume to this one. I left
You were the
San
guy,
Diego.
I knew it.
No, just really enjoyed this conversation. A couple years ago, 2018, we collaborated with an organization called MD5. It's since been renamed INSEN. But at that time, it was a program where active duty people could come and work in industry for 3 months. And we had a gentleman that came from, a gunnery sergeant that came from the Marine Corps and worked with us doing design thinking and a lot of innovation stuff. Went back to the Marine Corps and was the first enlisted graduate of the Naval Postgraduate School. And there's just an act of Congress this year called the SMART Act, named after him, that allows more people that are enlisted to do that. So they've since stopped doing that for some reason. I don't know why. But the idea came to me from this conversation that you follow the Army learning model, education, training, and then lifelong learning. There's a lot of people in industry that could do the same thing, right? Spend 3 months and go be active duty or contribute to your organizations. Why isn't there more of that back and forth between industry, where we're just taking a 3-month break from what we do and contributing to the government or to the Department of Defense?
I think it's a great question. I don't know the answer why there isn't more, back and forth. I think there's been efforts over time that maybe have been stopped and started for, someone goes and tries to intern and they come back, or they go work somewhere for a few months and then come, but it's not robust enough and it's not systemic enough to have a big impact. I think that type of creative approach to talent management and facilitating relationships is going to be necessary going forward. So I think it has great merit.
One of the ways that academia has changed in the last decade or so is, it used to be that all faculty were kind of the same. They had very similar kinds of responsibilities for a certain amount of teaching, a certain amount of research, a certain amount of service, et cetera. That's no longer true. And we have a lot of faculty at Baylor, for example, clinical faculty, where engagement in the private sector is actually part of what they do. That's part of their job responsibilities. They tend to be somewhat less research active, but they provide a lot of that kind of bridge, if you will, between academia and the world of work, that I think has really enriched our universities in important ways.
Yeah, I would say if you haven't had the chance to visit the software factory over here with ACC, you will see that in practice and in action.
And I'll just add, there's several programs, but one of them called HQEs, Highly Qualified Experts. So I know Army utilizes them, and I'm sure the other DoD side also uses them as well. It's not a 3 month, but I think it's a contractual agreement for 1 year to 3 years or so forth.
That's great question. Any other great questions out here in the audience? So don't be shy. It's all about listening and learning and collaborating.
While you're waiting, if I might add
Please,
one
sir.
thing. We are at ACC, and I just want to recognize a couple of our trustees who make this possible. So we have Gigi Edwards-Bryant and Dana Walker. So they help make this possible.
I'm giving you a round of applause. There you go.
That's great. I think one of the comments, I think it may have been you, General, that said something around partnership. In order for our country to stay strong and dominant, that partnership is so critical. And I think that resonated a lot with many people in the audience. So, any other questions I can share with you? We have a program with the Department of Defense called SkillBridge. And SkillBridge is an awesome program where when the individual is about to leave the Department of Defense, there's a 6-month internship that they have with industry. We have found some of the absolute best people who have joined our company come from that program. So that partnership goes very deep throughout not just industry as well. So, any more questions? How about a round of applause for our moderator and our panelists? Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. Great information. Thank you, Abdul.